Hello class, Mr. Guarino here. In this video, I'm going to illustrate how to make an animation from our cartoon mashup layers file in Adobe Animate. But before we do that, I'm going to start a new one just to go over some basic animation terminology and techniques in Adobe Animate. So I'm starting with our standard HD size, 30 frames per second and HTML5 canvas. Just going to work with the one layer right now, and I'm just going to draw, an oval. And you can see it's going to be red with a black stroke. So let me just draw it over here. So we have an oval. To make an animation, you have to extend the timeline because right now it's only one frame. So you need multiple frames. Because we have 30 frames per second, if I go out to 30 frames, that's equal to 1 second. Let me make this a little bigger. Yeah, it should be good, just so you can see where the frames are. So every 5 frames, they make it like a little bit of a light gray. And then they're darker gray for the other frames. There's 3 shortcut keys that you use all the time when you're making an animation. The first key is the F5 key. So if I click out here to frame 90, and we're talking F5, the key above all the other keys on your keyboard, not pressing the F key and pressing the number 5 key at the same time. It's the key that's labeled with an F and a 5. So if I press that, what it does is it extends the frames all the way out to wherever I had clicked. They're all the same frames. We call them like regular frames. Okay? The little black solid circle means it's a keyframe. The little line right here means it's the end of this sequence of those keyframes, or of these frames, these regular frames. So the keyframe is where the artwork starts, and this is where it ends. When we say artwork, whether it's something you drew or something you imported, the stuff that's on the stage on this particular layer. Let me undo that. Notice it also undoes like the playhead movement. And right now I can't drag the playhead across because there's only one frame. Let me go back out to frame 90 again. This time I'm going to press F6. And what it did is it gave me regular frames up to frame 89. But at frame 90, it put in another keyframe. And so the keyframe is basically a frame with the solid black circle on the bottom. What that means is on this frame, if I go to my free transform tool, just this tool because it's easy to show you what's going on, and I click here, I can change this artwork. Let me double click so I get the stroke too. I can change this artwork without changing the artwork of this circle, which exists all the way out to frame 89. But then at frame 90, it's different. It's a little smaller. Okay, let me undo all of that. And this time at frame 90, I'm going to press F7. And what that does, very similar to F6, it extends the keyframes, the regular frames out to frame 89, and then it puts a blank keyframe on frame 90, a circle that's hollow. Meaning there's no artwork on there. There's nothing exists on the stage at frame 90. Okay, so those are the 3 really common shortcuts. Let me undo all of that again and show you that if I right click on frame 90, I get all that stuff. I can insert frames, which was F5. I can insert a keyframe or insert a blank keyframe. Over here it says F6 is convert to keyframes. It's the same sort of thing as insert. And over here, F7, you put a blank keyframe there. So it's the same thing. Just the shortcut keys are F5, F6, F7. You use them so much, I won't bother to right click and choose it off the list. F5 to extend the frames. F6 to extend the frames and put in a new keyframe. F7 to extend the frames and put in a new blank keyframe. And then the last thing you have to know, let me undo all of this. I'm going to press at frame 90, F5. So I have my oval from frame 1 up to frame 90. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a tween over here, an animation. And to make an animation, this has to be a symbol, not just a shape or an object. So I'm going to double click on this, and the long way is modify, convert to symbol. But look what shortcut key it is, F8. So basically there's 4 keys, F5, F6, F7, and F8. If I go and right click here and say create a motion tween, it's going to come up and say, hey, I can't do it unless you convert that thing on this layer to a symbol. If I say OK, it converts it to a symbol, but it converts it to the type of symbol it wants to by default. I don't like doing that because I want you to convert it to a particular type of symbol. So I'm going to choose cancel. I'm going to move this back here. Let me leave it there. If I double click on this and say modify, convert to symbol, I want to make sure that you have it listed as a graphic symbol, not a button or a movie clip. Buttons are little buttons you can put on a website with some embedded code. When you click the button, it does something or goes to a different website. A movie clip is if you want to use Animate to make a video game. At least that's what I know you would use a movie clip for, because you can control a movie clip with code. But we want graphic symbols because we're doing animations. So if I was to name this oval, O-V-A-L, and click OK, notice it put a property keyframe here. So these frames go from 1 to, I guess, 30. And then at 31, it's like a different piece of artwork. And that's not really what I wanted to do. Okay, because this is a shape, and then it becomes a symbol over here. So I don't really want to do that. I don't want it to still be a shape over here. See if I can, it's a shape, it's not a symbol. Over here, it's a symbol. Okay, notice the difference. When I click one time, it says graphic symbol. Well, when I click in these frames, if I click it one time, it's a shape. So I got 2 different things here. I don't want that. So let me undo. And notice I'm pressing Control Z. It not only undoes the changes to the symbol, but it undoes like every movement, even the movements of the playhead. Alright, so now we're back here. And I'm going to go out to frame 90. I'm going to have to do this all over again. Sorry, F5. And this thing right now is just a shape. And so I want to go back to here. Go to my library. I do have a symbol in there, so I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to right click and delete it. And now I've messed up pretty good. You know what? Let's make a new layer. Delete this layer. Make a new layer. Delete this layer. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to click over here. Draw my oval back again. And now this time, instead of being somewhere over here when I make the tween, because I right click to make a tween, I'm going to leave it here or convert it to a symbol. And I'm going to go and click on this, double click it, and press F8 and call it oval. And leave it on graphic symbol. If it's not on graphic symbol, change it to graphic symbol. Say OK. So now here's the oval in my library, and it originates at the first frame. So now I can right click anywhere along the line here and say create motion tween, and it's not going to want to create a symbol and have it be different in the middle of the animation or the tween. By the way, the word tween, you know where that comes from? Well, I'll explain it in a second. So now I got these yellow frames. What that's showing me is I have a motion tween. So if I click on this and move it, it should animate when I hit the playhead. But guess what? It doesn't move anywhere. Because the most common mistake in Animate is you move something because you want an animation. But you move it when your playhead is in a position that you didn't really want it at. So meaning I want my circle to start here, then I want it to like fly across the screen. So if I just move it, all I'm doing is repositioning it at frame 1. You have to remember, move the playhead first. So I'm going to move it over to frame 30. And Now I'm going to move it over here. And when I let go, ta-da, I get this line with a bunch of dots on it. And I get this little diamond over here. This little diamond is not a keyframe, it's a property keyframe. Meaning, I didn't change my artwork, but I changed some of the properties of it. Specifically, I changed the position. And the reason why it's called the tween is because you determine the first location and then the next location, and the computer and the program determine all the steps in between to have it move from the first step to the second step. And you can drag the playhead and see that. You can do all kinds of things with a motion tween, not just position it. So if I click here and I go to my free transform tool and I shrink it down, let me even squish it kind of weird. Well, it starts off as a circle and transforms into more of an oval. If I say, gee, I don't really want transformation of the shape, I just want position, if I right click here and I say to clear keyframe, and I could say all and it takes away the whole thing. But if I just say, I think it's scale, it'll still have the position change, but it'll stay as a circle. It won't be free transformed to be squished into an oval. And there you go. And so it still moves, but it doesn't squish into an oval. Then if I go back to the beginning and press play, there's your animation. You can also adjust the animation. But remember, the most common thing is you start fooling around with things or changing things without having the playhead really where you really want it. So I'm going to go back to my diamond, and then I'm going to come over here. If I get my cursor, not the free transform tool here, the select tool, if I get it just right, I can bend this. And now my animation looks like that. So you can bend the path after you've made it. You can also, let's say I don't want the circle to end up in the corner, I want it to end up in the middle. I'm going to make a mistake. If I click here and drag it, I'm not really changing the motion from 1 to 30. I'm adding another motion because look at where my playhead is. So when I move it here, we get that. Now maybe you want that. That would be okay. But my intention was to change from 1 to 30, and I didn't do that. So I got 1 to 30, and then 30 to, 58, whatever it is. So let me undo that. I can undo. I can go right-click here and say clear keyframe. Clear keyframe, and say all. And then say, oh yeah, I got to put this back on the diamond. Then move it. There we go. So now I've adjusted that animation, that tween from 1 to 30, rather than add another piece to it. And then let's say that I do want it to fly up over here. Okay, then I put this playhead where I want it, maybe frame 60. And I drag this up here. And I get something else. So now I have this motion. And there's other things you can do as well. So if I go to properties, now because it's a symbol, you can't just change the fill and the stroke. If you wanted to do that, you could double click it, and now you're inside it. So now it goes back to me in an oval instead of a symbol. And you can change the fill and the stroke, but you're not changing it only here, you're changing it of the whole symbol. So if I change this to green, and then I say, okay, go back to scene 1, it doesn't go from red to green. The symbol now is all green. But if you do want to change the coloring, you can't really change the fill and the stroke, as I said, but you can go and change a color effect. So if I go to tint, I can have it be, let's do more red since I made it green. So you don't get a lot of options. I don't know. Did I do it? No. There we go. Now it's red. But look what I did. I didn't put it at 60. I put it at like 58, 59. So I goofed. So from 59 to 60, it goes back to green. 59 down to 30, it goes to green. So really, this property keyframe should be over there. So I can undo that. Oops. Move this over to here. Remember, put the playhead where you want it. The most common mistake, I just did it myself. Let's say tint. Turn that up. There we go. So now from 1 all the way to 60, it changes to red. If I didn't want it to change to red until it got here, so from here to here I want it to be red, then I kind of have to watch what I'm doing. If I go here and I say the tint, I could look and see what it is and maybe perhaps change it back. Right, so this is like all the way down here. I think it was 0. So if I come over here and I look at the tint and I put it back to 0, so now I've made the tint here the same as here, same as frame 1 and 30, so now it stays green and then it changes to red. So there's all types of things you can do. You can also come here and click on this and go to alpha. And alpha is, how transparent something is. And right now, along the path, it's going to disappear. So it goes from green, it's starting to change red, but you don't even get to see it change red because we changed the alpha. So how about over here, we make the alpha, and I guess I messed up the colorization, but again, it's something you can fiddle with. If it was a square, it'd be obvious we could do this. We could, you know what? Let me do this. Let's get rid of this alpha over here. Let's just leave it green the whole way. Now that you saw how to do the red. But over here, I'm going to go into my free transform tool and I'm going to squish this like this. But I'm also going to rotate it like that. So you can see it starts as a circle. As it's moving, it's rotating. What if you wanted to rotate it like, make it go around and around? Well, again, look what I did. I did it at the wrong spot. Silly me. Put it back over here. Not that it would matter all that much. And I want it to go around and around. Well, it really only spins one time because you're not really spinning it at that point. You're telling it where to start and where to end. But if I come here and instead of using my free transform tool to rotate it back and forth, if I go to my rotation panel or my free transform panel, notice it says 37, I don't know, minus 37 something degrees. So what if I put 720? It looks like it's only here, but really it knows now that I want it spinning all the way. So look, see how it's spinning? So what I'm telling it is I wanted to do 2 full rotations as it goes along the path. Okay, so this is how you do an animation. We have the solid circle, we have the diamonds, and if we wanted another circle, I can click out here, press F6, and that would extend it. Over here, I could press F7. It gives me a blank one. I could draw something else or put another cartoon character on there. Okay, so that's something you want to fool around with.